Today's video, we're going to be looking at the new Funko release of the Disney Darkwing Duck action figure. Just how tall is DW? Let's take the tape measure. Darkwing Duck, if you count the top of his hat, is about 4¼ inches in height. He only gets one accessory, and that is his gas capsule gun, which is unfortunately, a little missing of some extra color. It's basically just been molded in a very soft kind of plastic. It's not super soft, mind you, but it's soft enough. Looks good. Again, I wish it had some extra coloring to it, but I'm sure if you want to go in, you could kind of paint the bands or something like that. Looks good. It does fit in his hand, and it fits only in one hand. The other hand is just kind of a relaxed palm. But he does hold it, to his credit, he does hold it rather well. Of all the Disney figure releases from Funko for the first wave, this was the one I was really looking forward to the most. I never had the original Darkwing Duck figures, always really wanted to, but truth be told, those figures weren't all that great, relying more so on gimmick than they did on the actual sculpts. Especially Darkwing, he seemed to suffer the most. However, the fact that Funko now has acquired the licensing for this, I have to admit, I'm really smitten by this figure. It looks quite good. It's basically everything I would want a Darkwing Duck figure to be, and I dare say so much, I could say so much more, but what else more would I want from this? Sure, granted, he doesn't have removable hats, which I suppose could be one thing, but really, does he need a removable hat? Would you ever really display Darkwing Duck with a removable hat? I know I wouldn't. Face sculpt is good. I like that his mouth is open. He's got a little bit of faux pas, a little bit of paint woo-woos over there on the side. Other than that, he's generally pretty clean, especially like his costume seems pretty clean. The cape is also done very nicely in a almost purpley gray, with the interior being that of pink. Of course, he's got peg holes on the undersides of his feet. I do find that he leans slightly to the side. It's just by the nature of the way that they've got him posed. Like, he does have waist swivel, which you can kind of compensate for it. But I don't know if you can see it or not. The one foot seems like it doesn't plant as flat as this foot right here. Ultimately meaning that when you stand the figure, he's going to kind of topple over. Or if you can rotate the waist slightly, and it seems to counterbalance and make sure he's not going to topple over. Of course, for scale comparisons, I'm sure you guys want to also see how he stacks up against, say, the likes of Scrooge McDuck. So let's reach off camera. There he is right there, next to Scrooge McDuck. And also, while we're at it, let's bring in Baloo. Which, again, I mentioned this during the Baloo review, that he seems, well, he doesn't seem, he's very much a short figure. Could have afforded, I think, a little bit of a taller release, but at least Scrooge McDuck and Darkwing Duck seem relatively accurate to their sizes. So I think that's more of an important thing for me. Baloo being taller, yeah, that could have been a much better thing to do, but ultimately the one I was really excited for was Darkwing Duck. Let's move these out of the way. As for the rest of the figure's body, again, it's his trademark outfit. Maybe they could eventually release him with the helmet, which also brought some thought popping into my head. I was thinking to myself, I wonder, I don't have it, and unfortunately I wish I did get it, was the Darkwing Duck motorcycle. It fit, obviously, the figures that were, of course, corresponding and relative to that figure line, but I'm curious as to whether this Darkwing Duck would fit on that motorcycle. I would have to probably try to find it on eBay to see if that would be a potential, but if it does fit, that would be really cool to have him displayed on top of his motorcycle, and I think that'd be pretty cool. Cape is a soft rubbery plastic, as well as really his hat, which seems a little bit more denser than the cape itself. Posability on this guy. His head appears to be a ball joint, but you really can't move the head up and down all that much. It does seem like it restricts it a little bit. Likely maybe due to the collar that he's sporting. Universal joints on the arms, which I like. I'm glad at least he has that. Hinges, of course, back and forth. Speaking of hinges, he's also got hinges in the arm. They've tucked the hinge in so that at least you can bend the arm completely, and it bends perfectly straight as a 90-degree angle. I like that they put that little care to put a notch in there so that you could actually bend the elbow and have the arm completely straight, or at least, you know, a straight 90-degree bend. That's what I was trying to say. Swivel on the waist, and he doesn't seem to have the V-cut on the legs, or if he does, mine just seems extremely stiff. Limited, yes, on posability on the lower legs, but again, doesn't really bother me all that much because the rest of the figure stacks up very, very well. And as well, let me just show you too, when you put the blaster into his hand, they've sculpted the finger in such a way that it looks like he's going to be pulling the trigger, which is, again, a nice extra little touch there. Just before we wrap up this review, I also want to mention something about his gun. The gun fits easily into his hand, but I've noticed each time that I'm putting the gun into his hand, not sure if you can see it, it looks like it's either wearing the paint on the glove or it's leaving residual paint from the handle onto the glove. So it ends up ultimately getting like these little gray impressions of paint left on the inner palm of his hand. I'm assuming it's probably coming off from the blaster itself. Maybe, I don't know if it's just really cheap paint, but it does seem like it's coming off. It does beg the question though, if the paint is coming off the blaster, the actual gas gun, why didn't they just mold it in black plastic rather than, because it looks like it might be gray underneath. Gray also could have worked as well. Why they would have painted it instead of just simply molding it as gray or black or whatever color that they would want to have used for it. Painting it seems to make absolutely no sense whatsoever, but I just want to mention that to you as well. Picking up this figure, you may find a little bit of that paint kind of starting to show on his hands, and it's either the paint coming off from his palms or it's the paint coming off from the handle of his gas gun. Despite some problems I have with the paint coming off into the hand area of Darkwing Duck, and the fact that at times he's a little difficult to stand, this is really the Darkwing Duck figure that I've always wanted. Even as a kid, my friends had Darkwing Duck figures and I used to go over to their house and play with them, but they weren't really as good as they were in the cartoon. Like, Darkwing Duck seemed very awkward looking. I think he even had like a spinning hat as his gimmick. This is kind of really the Darkwing Duck I've always really wanted, and I hope, fingers crossed, that Funko decides to expand on this line, not only just giving us additional Disney characters from the other cartoons, but also giving us more characters from each of these cartoons. So as good as I love Darkwing Duck, it would be awesome if we can get some Darkwing Duck villains that I can pose this particular figure with. Still a great pickup. I actually found this at EB Games here in Canada, which I guess would be the equivalent of GameStop. If you guys can't find this in retail stores, which I don't know if retail stores are stocking these, comic book stores might be a good option. Or again, if you're here in Canada, you can also check out EB Games, and that's where I found this guy as well as the other two figures. Still got to pick up the Chip and Dale. Eventually, when I pick those guys up, reviews of those will follow as well. But of course, all of this can't happen if you don't hit that little subscribe button down below this video. Plug. You'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos, and you'll always know when new videos are coming up onto this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. See you next time.